Hello, friends. We are interested in the geography of our views, so please like and write in the comments from which city are you watching us, and were there loud stories of betrayal in your city? Share your stories with us. Maybe the next betrayal story will be from your city, and we start. The morning sun slowly rose over the Pacific horizon, flooding the panoramic windows of Victoria Hayes's office with a soft, warm light. The sun's rays sparkled on the glass facades of the skyscrapers of downtown San Francisco, painting the city in shades of amber and gold. Behind the huge windows, the urban landscape spread out. The streets were noisy below, cars crawled slowly in the morning traffic jam, and somewhere in the distance the outlines of the Golden Gate Bridge, covered with a light morning haze, could be seen. Victoria sat at her desk made of noble dark wood. Its surface was impeccably smooth, like a mirror, which reflected the contours of her laptop and neatly folded documents. Her movements were precise, confident. She picked up a cup of still hot latte, entwined with a thin lace of steam, and slowly took a sip. A wedding ring glittered on the ring finger of her right hand, elegant, with a thin inlay of white gold and a small but clean diamond. It symbolized not just marriage, but a new, more personal peak in her life, like another mark on the map of conquered goals. She turned 35. Behind me are years of hard work, sleepless nights, countless pitches and presentations. For a year now, she has been CEO of her own company, Haystack Solutions, which she founded almost a decade ago, when she still rented a tiny office on the third floor of a dilapidated building in the Soma district. Now headquartered in a state-of-the-art tower overlooking the bay, her name was heard at conferences, in investment circles, and in the headlines of Forbes, which recently named her one of the most powerful women in technology. Victoria was a woman accustomed to being in control. She calculated her moves several steps ahead, like in a chess game. She knew the value of time, words, and silence. Her style was laconic, strict, but elegant, discreet makeup, a dark blue trouser suit with a clear shoulder line, a cream-colored silk blouse, a thin watch on her wrist. Everything in her appearance said, "I know who I am and what I'm worth." However, on this day, something was different about her. Thoughts did not intertwine into the usual logical flow, and my gaze kept wandering away from the laptop screen. A reminder flashed on the smartphone display: Gala evening, 19 o'clock, Fairmont Hotel. Dress code, black tie. Spouses are welcome. The charity reception was an annual event that brought together the cream of the tech industry, venture magnates, billion-dollar startups, and representatives of political circles. Usually such evenings were her element. Victoria knew how to shine, say the right things, and conclude informal agreements over a glass of champagne. She knew who was competing with whom, who was investing in what, and how to have the right conversation without giving away too much. But today something was gnawing at her from the inside, like a grain of sand in a perfectly polished car. She took another sip of the latte, but the taste suddenly seemed bitter. The image of Ethan, her husband, appeared in her thoughts. A stocky, broad-shouldered man with strong arms and piercing gray eyes that reflected sternness and directness. His close-cropped brown hair and slight stubble gave him the appearance of a man accustomed to wind, rain, and dealing with issues on the brink of survival. After serving in the army, he became a survival instructor. He led groups into the mountains, taught orienteering, making fire, and building shelters. The smell of pine needles and the crackling of a fire was closer to him than the aroma of perfume and the roar of glossy halls. Ethan was a man of honor, silent but reliable. He never complained and always supported her, even if he did not fully understand the essence of her business decisions. But everything related to secular tinsel was alien to him. Receptions, buffets, empty talk about income and IPOs caused him quiet irritation. He said more than once that he felt in such places like a moose at a ball. Victoria knew that tonight would be a test not only for him, but also for her. Because in this ideal, carefully thought-out world of corporate strategies and public image, she had to fit into a part of life that did not obey plans and algorithms. A person who could not be optimized or presented as an asset, but only accepted. She looked into the reflection of the glass and held her gaze for a moment. There was a woman who achieved almost everything she dreamed of. But today she felt that between almost and everything, there was a thin but important line of personal choice. Just last month, they attended a business party together, organized by one of the Haystack investors. The evening took place in a penthouse at the top of one of the towers in the city center, where the air was filled with the aromas of expensive wine, cigars, and ambition. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, glass walls overlooking the shimmering San Francisco at night. It all looked like a scene from a glossy magazine. Confident people, dressed in designer suits, with signature cocktails in their hands and business cards ready to be exchanged, moved around the hall. Ethan looked alien. He came in a dark blue jacket and a light shirt without a tie, clothes that he obviously wore rarely and reluctantly. His strong figure, military posture, and reserved expression made him look less like a companion to a successful businesswoman, and more like a bodyguard accompanying a VIP. He stood to the side, leaning on a high table by the window, with a glass of mineral water in his hand, looking somewhere beyond the glass, where the evening city pulsated below. He tried to participate in conversations when he was involved, but each time he looked as if he had stepped into someone else's universe full of terms that meant nothing to him. Seed funding, MVP, scale, exit strategy. The words that Victoria operated with ease sounded to him like another form of life. Despite his sincere efforts, he was bored. This was evident in the way he fiddled with the edge of his glass, the way he adjusted his sleeve from time to time, the way he pursed his lips when someone started discussing the prospects of blockchain or metaverses. He did not complain, did not show irritation, but Victoria, knowing his habits and views, saw everything without words. I saw and understood. The next day, on the sidelines of the office, one of my colleagues jokingly said, "Vic, is your husband a part-time bodyguard, or is it necessary?" He is, of course, charismatic, but remains silent, as if assessing the level of threat. They laughed, but she felt a twinge inside. This joke, although not out of malice, hurt her much deeper than she was ready to admit, because it said, "He is not from our world. And also, you chose the wrong one." Now, sitting at her desk, she again remembered that awkwardness, that shadow of resentment that slipped into her heart when she noticed how Ethan scanned the night horizon, avoiding the conversations in which she bathed with ease. He tried for her sake, for the sake of their union, but every time he found himself in her environment, it was as if he had lost his support. She looked down at the phone and mechanically unlocked the screen, not knowing what exactly she was looking for. A message from him. Confirmation that he will definitely come today, or at least a smiley face, a sign that he's on the same page with her. The display read 10:03. The morning had already settled into a rhythm, and Ethan, as always, left long before she left the apartment. He went to his training base, a plot of land outside the city, where among the coniferous forest there were tents, wooden shelters, ropes hung, and training routes arranged. There, among the birds, the fresh air, and the smell of the earth, he felt at home. Unlike the office, where it smelled of coffee, metal, and tension, at the base everything was different, simple, rough, real. Their morning was low-key, like most recent ones. She sat at the kitchen island, going through her email, wearing a robe draped over a chair, with a half-drunk cup of green tea next to her. He approached in a military manner, quietly, quickly, confidently. Kissing her on the top of her head, as always, he lightly ran his hand over her shoulder. "What time will you be back?" he asked, buttoning his jacket. "We have a reception today, remember? Gala." He chuckled as if he had just remembered. "Let's see if I can get out in time," he said, avoiding eye contact. There was a hint of doubt, uncertainty, or perhaps a quiet protest in his voice, barely noticeable even to her. He left without waiting for an answer, leaving behind a faint smell of forest shampoo and leather boot wax. There was silence in the air, and a little bit cold. Anxiety stirred inside again. Victoria understood. There was a high probability that her husband would try to avoid the event. It wasn't that he didn't want to be there at all. He loved her and was proud of her. She knew that. but Ethan felt like a fish out of water among the ties, business cards, and talk of startup funding. Should I cancel my participation? A crazy thought flashed, but Victoria immediately threw it away. There's too much at stake. Today, she is scheduled to meet with potential investors to discuss a new round of funding for her company. Appearing alone, without a spouse, would mean raising unnecessary questions and rumors. She was distracted from her thoughts by a light, almost polite knock on the door. Following him, a familiar voice sounded muffled. "Vicky, can I?" "Come in," she responded, instantly recognizing Chloe's voice. The door smoothly opened slightly, and Chloe confidently looked into the office, her longtime friend, almost a sister in spirit, with whom they had been connected for more than 10 years of friendship, which began from the time of their first steps in the world of big business. Chloe was 36, but she could easily pass for 30 sophisticated features, a light, barely noticeable smile, a penetrating, lively look in her dark brown eyes. Slender, like a ballerina, she knew how to carry herself with grace, as if she had been born on the catwalk. Today, she was wearing a light beige-fitted coat with a gold clasp, underneath which she could see a champagne-colored silk blouse and skinny cappuccino-colored trousers. Graceful pumps with thin heels walked silently on the floor, and even her scent, something between vanilla and orange blossom, was carefully selected and perfectly matched her image. Chloe worked as a PR manager for one of the largest media corporations in the area, a woman who always knew how and what to say, who to wink at, and how to intelligently deflect an awkward question. In her presence, everyone felt that every word had weight. She was one of those who knew how to turn a scandal into a victory and a bad interview into a triumph. Her voice was soft but confident, and her gaze was attentive, sometimes too attentive. Chloe knew how to notice what others tried to hide. She always had an upright posture, her movements were precise and polished, and her facial expressions were slightly theatrical, like that of a person who knows that he is being watched. But Victoria appreciated something else in her, the rare quality of being there when you really needed it. Not intrusively, not out of duty, but sincerely and on time. There were no secrets between them. At least, that's what Victoria thought. They had to go through a lot together: career breakthroughs, failures, breakups, late-night conversations in the kitchen with a glass of wine. They knew each other in vulnerable states, without makeup, with tired eyes, with a voice broken from tears or fatigue. Chloe was a good listener. Or, if necessary, speak mercilessly directly. She went inside without waiting for a second invitation and sat down in the chair opposite, gracefully crossing her legs. She held 2 glasses of coffee in her hands. She immediately handed one of them to Victoria, accompanying the movement with a playful squint. "Am I guessing you're on a latte again?" She smiled, looking at her friend inquisitively. "You always guess right." Victoria smiled weakly, accepting the glass. Her hand trembled slightly, either from the coldness of the coffee or from her own anxious thoughts that had been hovering in her head all morning. Chloe noticed the movement. Of course she did. Her attentive gaze became more serious for a second, but she did not immediately ask questions. She was just there, as always. "How is our indestructible CEO doing?" Chloe asked slyly, taking a sip of her coffee. "You look like you're thinking about something heavy." Victoria sighed and put down her emptying glass. "Yeah, there's a reason to wince," she admitted. "Today is this ill-fated gala reception. Do you remember what I told you? I really don't want to go there alone, and Ethan, I'm sure, will try to dodge again." Chloe nodded in understanding, her eyes sparkling with interest. "Oh yes, a party at the bigwigs of Silicon Valley," she drawled. "It will probably be full of expensive suits and pathos. Ethan would probably happily trade it all for a night in the woods with a campfire and a tent, right?" They both grinned. Chloe knew Ethan's character and always allowed herself to tease him in a friendly manner. However, this time Victoria was not in the mood for jokes. She rubbed her temples. "I don't know what to do," she said quietly. "If I appear alone, the board of directors may decide that I have problems in the family. I recently got married. They all know about it. Questions will begin. Why is there no husband? Is everything okay?" Chloe set her glass down and leaned forward, lowering her voice as if she was about to announce important news. I have an idea. Most importantly, don't be nervous and listen to the end. Since Ethan is not eager to go, maybe there is another way. What if? What if you go there with another person? Victoria frowned. In what sense? She asked warily. How is it with another person? I must introduce my husband to the guests. Exactly, Chloe quickly interrupted her. Introduce my husband. But it is not necessary that he really was Ethan. Most of these people have never seen your spouse in person. They know you have it, and that's it. Well, here you go. You can come arm in arm with another man and tell everyone that this is Ethan Hayes. Nobody will know the truth, and the real Ethan will calmly go about his business. Victoria froze, looking at her friend in disbelief. Are you suggesting that I hire an actor to portray my husband? She finally spoke. Chloe shrugged. Why not? After all, it's just for one evening. But the reputation will be preserved. Believe me, in the business world, they don't do this for the sake of appearances. The idea seemed wild to Victoria. She even blushed slightly with indignation. This is crazy, Chloe. Fool everyone, even if theoretically. Where can I find a person who will agree to such an adventure? And how will I then look my colleagues in the eyes? Chloe calmly withstood her outburst. You know, I wouldn't offer if I didn't want to help, she said softly. And there is a man. Do you remember my distant friend, Ryan Cole? Tall, brown-haired, a little younger than us. Right now, he is without a permanent job. He works part-time as a model at events, something like that. A very charismatic guy, he could play your charming husband without any difficulty. Victoria was silent in shock. Ryan's name came to mind. It seems that Chloe had mentioned him once, but Victoria had not met him personally. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that she was even seriously discussing something like this. I can't believe it, she muttered. You're proposing to marry a stranger to my husband in front of my own investors. Well, not exactly a stranger, Chloe smiled. I'll vouch for him. In addition, he is handsome, courteous, and knows how to behave in society. Everyone will be fascinated. You just need to create the appearance of a loving couple for a couple of hours. Ryan can handle it, after which everyone will go their separate ways. Victoria covered her face with her hands for a moment. On the one hand, the thought of deceiving everyone disgusted her. On the other hand, she was desperately looking for a way out. If Ethan really doesn't come, and it looks like he won't, then either go alone and risk your reputation, or... She lowered her hands and looked seriously at her friend. Are you sure this Ryan is adequate? How can he not give himself away? Why won't it come up anywhere later? Chloe nodded happily, feeling her resistance break. Absolutely. I'll talk to him today. If you give the go-ahead, we'll agree on the details. I promise no one will ever know. This is between us. Ethan won't know anything either. Why does he need unnecessary worries? At the mention of her husband, Victoria shuddered. She didn't want to deceive her husband even more than she wanted to deceive her colleagues. But she convinced herself that she was doing this for his sake too, to save her from a painful evening. And in the end, it was just a harmless ploy that shouldn't harm anyone. Okay, she said slowly, feeling heavy in her soul. Call him. If he agrees, let him meet with me before the reception. I need to at least see who I'm going to be dealing with. Of course, Chloe responded instantly. You won't regret it, Vicky. Everything will go smoothly, you'll see. She stood up, satisfied, and stepped towards the exit, saying one last thing. I'll contact Ryan right away and call you back. Try not to be nervous. When the door closed, Victoria sat motionless for a long time, comprehending the decision she had just made. Her heart was beating fast. A vague feeling of guilt and a timid hope that everything would really work out were fighting inside. She quietly whispered, "What am I doing?" But in the empty office, no one answered her. In the evening, when the sky over the San Francisco Bay began to turn soft orange-pink tones, as if someone had splashed watercolors on an endless canvas, the city gradually plunged into golden twilight. The sun's rays, reflecting from the surface of the water, played with reflections on the glass facades of skyscrapers, and the wind from the ocean brought with it the subtle aroma of salt and distant wanderings. Victoria was already standing in front of a tall mirror in the bedroom of her penthouse, located on one of the top floors of a modern building with panoramic windows, which offered a breathtaking view of the Golden Gate Bridge and the sparkling lights of the evening city. The interior of the room was decorated in a minimalist style with Art Deco elements. Smooth marble surfaces, strict lines of furniture, warm light from designer lamps placed in the corners created an atmosphere of discreet luxury. She tried to concentrate, but her thoughts were confused. The upcoming event, an evening with people who always mean something, always demand something, seemed to hang over her like a heavy cloud. She wore a designer dark blue floor-length evening dress. The fabric flowed softly over her body, emphasizing the smoothness of the silhouette. The bodice was finely and skillfully embroidered with silver threads that sparkled in the light of the chandelier, reminiscent of stardust in the night sky. The dress flowed around her figure with noble severity, in every curve of which confidence and status were read. On her slender legs are high-heeled shoes from Manolo Blahnik, with an elegant strap and a glossy sheen of leather, emphasizing their newness and impeccable taste of the owner. Each of her movements in them was like a precise dance. The steps are barely audible, but they carry power. Sapphire earrings, set in white gold, shimmered in her ears, reflecting the light like tiny clumps of the night sky. A bracelet from the same set tapped lightly on her wrist as she once again nervously adjusted her hair, styled in a flawless wave. Her face, reflected in the mirror, was calm, almost impenetrable, but a spark of anxiety flickered in her eyes, barely noticeable, but real. The room smelled of perfume, a light, enveloping trail with notes of iris, vanilla, and black pepper. The aroma that was her calling card imperceptibly filled the space, giving the whole scene an intimate depth. Outside the windows, the day was slowly fading, and in Victoria's heart an evening was brewing, full of hidden meanings and possible outcomes. Earlier in the day, Ethan sent her a message confirming her fears. "Sorry, Vicky, I can't get out. The group is delayed in the mountains until nightfall. I'll try to make amends later. Love you." She read these words with slight bitterness. Of course, he did not do it out of malice. He really had obligations to the students at training. But my soul did not become any easier. Victoria sighed, putting her phone away. Now there was no turning back for her. She glanced around the room, a spacious bedroom overlooking the twinkling lights of the city below. On the bedside table, there was a photograph of her and Ethan laughing, holding each other on the shore of Lake Tahoe. The picture reminded her of what a happy woman she was. Until today, clenching her hands into fists, Victoria whispered, "It's just a business necessity. For our sake," as if making excuses for the silent photograph. At that moment, the intercom rang. Victoria shuddered and hastened to answer. Chloe's face flashed on the screen. "Hello, we've arrived. Shall we rise?" Her ringing voice rang out. "Yes, of course, come in," Victoria answered, pressing the button. My heart beat even faster. "We have arrived." She clearly heard this "we." Ryan. Now she has to meet a stranger who will become Ethan for this evening. She automatically ran her palms along the sides of her dress, smoothing out invisible folds, and headed into the living room to greet the guests. The doorbell rang a minute later, briefly, but seemingly loud in the silence of her penthouse. The sound made Victoria flinch not from fear, but from the internal tension that she was still trying to suppress. Taking a short breath, she straightened her shoulders, ran her palm along the side of her dress, as if smoothing out a non-existent fold, and headed towards the door. Her every step was carefully measured, like an actress's before going on stage. She opened the door, trying to remain confident, but in the depths of her soul, she felt how everything inside was trembling from the unknown. After all, even the most polished image can be shaken by a careless glance or an unexpected word. Chloe stood on the threshold, beaming like a ray of light in this difficult evening. She wore a short champagne-colored cocktail dress that cleverly emphasized her energetic nature. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, and her eyes sparkled, like those of a girl who had been invited to a long-awaited ball. She bounced slightly on her heels, unable to contain her joy, and at the sight of Victoria, she immediately exclaimed, "You are simply a goddess," with sincere admiration, almost forgetting that a man was standing next to her. He also looked at Victoria with interest, but without impudence, with a light, almost cat-like smile on his lips. Tall, broad-chested, and confident in his posture, he seemed a man accustomed to attention, but not boastful of it. His hair was dark and neatly combed back, giving his appearance a bit of old-fashioned elegance. Lively blue eyes shone with attention not too persistent, but clearly tenacious, capable of noticing more than one would like. The tuxedo fit him perfectly, highlighting every silhouette and detail as if he was born in it. The look was completed with classic patent leather shoes and a dark hand-tied bow tie. But even behind all this impeccability, there was a sense of relaxation. He looked not like a person playing a role, but like someone who simply knows how to be at ease anywhere. Victoria suddenly felt a short electrical impulse flash inside her, a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and slight anxiety. She found herself unable to look away immediately. Her face remained calm, almost cold-blooded, but subtle changes began to occur inside like the trembling of air over hot asphalt. She nodded, smiling slightly, a polite gesture, but with a hint of mystery. "Good evening," she said, her voice velvety and balanced, but there was a spark hidden in it that only an attentive person would notice. This evening was just beginning, but there was already a premonition of something unusual in the air. "Victoria, meet Ryan Cole," Chloe blurted out from the doorway. "Today your knight is on a white horse." The man stepped forward and extended his hand. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Hayes," he said in a velvety voice in which a slight playfulness could be heard. Or maybe just Victoria. She felt slightly embarrassed as she shook his hand. "Just Victoria, of course. Thank you for helping out." She began and stopped short, not knowing how to properly address him in such a situation. "Ryan," he prompted. "No formalities. For everyone, I am Ethan, your happy husband. But in private, you can just Ryan." Victoria nodded and motioned for them to enter. She closed the door, feeling a strange detachment from what was happening, as if everything was not happening to her. Chloe immediately began fussily adjusting her friend's hair and dress, although everything was already perfect. Ryan, meanwhile, examined the interior of the spacious living room with interest. "We need to discuss the legend," Victoria said, trying to sound businesslike to stop the trembling in her voice. "If anyone asks questions. For example, where did you serve, Ethan?" "I thought about that," Chloe interjected. "It's better to be less specific. Let's say Ethan recently returned from the military and now works as a private survival instructor. In principle, this is true a description of the real Ethan. This makes it easier for Ryan not to get lost." "That's right," Ryan agreed, smiling at the corner of his mouth. "I will try to speak as little as possible and listen more, smile and nod. The main thing is to make a good impression around you, Victoria." He said her name softly, looking straight into her eyes. Victoria felt a strange excitement from his gaze and immediately mentally pulled herself together. Of course, he is just a professional, accustomed to seducing the public. His charming charm is part of the video. "Well, okay," she turned away, taking a clutch from the table, where she put her phone and lipstick. "We should probably go so as not to be late." "Yes, I already called the car," Chloe said. "He's waiting for us downstairs." A couple of minutes later, the trio went down the elevator and left the entrance. There was indeed a black business-class car parked at the side of the road. The driver opened the door for them. Ryan gallantly let Victoria go ahead, lightly touching her bare back with his hand. She tensed at this gesture, but did not show it. Chloe sat next to the driver, and Victoria and Ryan sat in the back seat. The car rushed through the evening streets of San Francisco. Victoria looked out the window at the city lights reflected in the bay and caught her reflection on the glass, the beautiful but tense face of a woman who had decided to take a risky gamble. Ryan was silent next to him, but at some point he quietly said, "Relax. Everything will be fine." She turned to him. He looked straight ahead, and for a moment she thought there was genuine warmth in his voice. "I hope so," She answered just as quietly. Ryan smiled at the corner of his lips. "You look amazing, if I may comment." "Your husband is lucky." Victoria didn't immediately find what to answer and only nodded gratefully, feeling the blood rushing to her cheeks. The compliment sounded charmingly natural. She reminded herself that this was part of his job today. It was already dark when they arrived at the reception venue, an upscale hotel in the financial district. A sign shone above the entrance. The entrance was illuminated, and expensive cars pulled up at the porch, unloading guests in evening dresses. Victoria felt a slight trembling. The show was about to begin. Ryan got out first and gave her his hand, helping her out. There were no photographers. The event was private, but several dozen pairs of eyes of guests, walking along the red carpet, glanced at her in passing. Victoria raised her head, trying to look confident. Walking nearby, one step behind, was Chloe, who managed to exchange a few words with an acquaintance at the entrance. In the luxurious ballroom of the hotel, soft background music was already thundering. A jazz ensemble was playing something relaxing. The guests were greeted by waiters with trays of champagne. Crystal chandeliers from the ceiling shone, filling the hall with warm light. Conversations could be heard everywhere: laughter, greetings, the clinking of glasses. Victoria put on her usual smile as she walked inside on Ryan's arm. "He is Ethan now," she reminded herself, and imagined how great it would be if the real Ethan held her hand just as confidently. However, there was a strange man nearby. His hand slightly squeezed her elbow, guiding her through the crowd. Chloe remained somewhere behind, lost among the guests. A familiar colleague, Thomas, a member of the board of directors of her company, immediately came out to meet Victoria. "Victoria, it's good to see you," he exclaimed, shaking her free hand. "Ethan, glad to meet you finally. I've heard so much about you." Ryan calmly shook Thomas's hand, nodding with a smile. "Mutually," he said. "Victoria talked a lot about you." "Only good things, I hope." Thomas joked absently and immediately turned to Victoria. "Advisors from New York are already here. I will introduce you to them a little later. By the way, great decision with the dress. You are the real star of the evening today." Victoria smiled gratefully at the compliment, noting to herself, "Thomas has no doubt that this is her husband." So far, everything was going smoothly. Thomas disappeared into the crowd, and Victoria and Ryan continued their walk. Several acquaintances smiled at her, and she introduced them to her husband. Ryan behaved perfectly. He spoke little, but confidently. There were warm intonations in his voice. He either hugged Victoria's waist or gently held her hand, skillfully playing the role of a loving husband. Each such touch at first made her shudder internally, but pretty soon she began to get used to it. The deception turned out to be more convincing than she expected. After an hour of small talk, Victoria almost relaxed. She had already drunk a glass of champagne and even allowed herself a couple of sips of wine at dinner. The tension subsided, the cheeks turned pink. Ryan sat next to them at their table, sometimes leaning over and whispering something carefree and playful in her ear, which made her smile or laugh quietly. From the outside, they probably looked like a happy couple, and Victoria herself, for a moment, almost believed in this illusion. It was even easy and pleasant for her to be next to such an attentive and gallant man. Immediately, she pulled herself together. "No, you shouldn't think like that. It's all part of the game." During the dinner, organizers spoke from the stage, reminding guests of the purpose of the evening, raising funds for educational programs for girls in the field of STEM. Victoria, as one of the honored guests and sponsors, even said a few words of congratulations, trying to speak cheerfully, although her thoughts kept returning to her personal problem, the absence of her real husband nearby. She found herself scanning the audience for Ethan several times before coming to her senses. After the main dinner, the less formal part of the evening began. Guests moved around the hall, communicated in groups, and more lively music sounded. Influential people approached Victoria, started talking about business, and she supported them as best she could, simultaneously catching the admiring glances of the ladies at her husband. Ryan coped with the role brilliantly. He nodded at the right time, sometimes inserting a joke or two words about how proud he was of his wife's successes. Victoria noticed how one of the investors' wives even sighed enviously after such words. They say how lucky she is with her husband. A little later, Victoria was called away for a couple of minutes by the head of one of the partner companies, and she left Ryan alone at the drinks counter. When she returned, she found him already talking with Chloe in the corner of the hall. The friend was holding two glasses of a bright cocktail in her hands and was just handing one of them to Ryan when she noticed Victoria. "Oh, the star has returned," she declared half-jokingly. "We decided to get you a cocktail so that you can relax too, my dear. You deserve a little rest. The night is still young." Victoria was a little surprised. She had already drunk enough and usually tried to take it in moderation at business evenings. But don't offend your friends with a refusal. Moreover, Chloe and Ryan looked at her with such enthusiasm. A ruby red liquid with ice and orange peel sparkled invitingly in the glass. She took the cocktail from Chloe. "What is this?" Victoria asked, sniffing the sweetish aroma. "Don't ask," Chloe laughed. "The bartender called it San Francisco Sunset." "Delicious," I answer. "Here's to a brilliant evening. To the success of our mission," Ryan winked, clinking his glass with Victoria. She smiled too and, without thinking twice, took a sip. The drink actually turned out to have a pleasant taste, fruity and slightly spicy. The alcohol was almost not felt, but my head instantly began to spin, as if a wave of heat swept through my body. Victoria attributed this to the fact that she drank quite quickly, trying to maintain the company. However, after a few minutes, she felt strangely relaxed. The thoughts in my head became fluid, as if a short tremor of excitement and euphoria ran somewhere. The music changed to a slow composition. Some couples began to go out to the center of the hall to dance. Ryan bowed slyly to Victoria and offered his hand. "Can I invite my beautiful wife to dance?" She wanted to object that she shouldn't attract too much attention, but she didn't seem to turn her tongue. In addition, part of her herself suddenly wanted to plunge into this whirlwind of pretense to the end. She placed the empty glass on a tray as a passing waiter passed and placed her hand in Ryan's. He led her to the middle of the hall. Chloe remained standing by the column, watching them go and smiling contentedly to herself. Victoria did not see this look, only Ryan was in her field of vision now. He wrapped one arm around her waist and intertwined their fingers with the other. They moved to the beat of the music. Slow jazz caressed the ears. Victoria felt her partner's strong fingers confidently guiding her. Ryan's face was very close. She could distinguish the subtle aroma of his cologne, warm, woody. He looked at her, and reflections of light danced in his blue eyes. And suddenly Victoria realized that she was smiling back at him, somehow too openly, even girlishly. Her heart began to beat faster, but she felt no fear or shame, only an intoxicating mixture of courage and levity. It was the last hour of the evening. Her mission was a success. She could allow herself to forget a little. So she justified the fact that she was dancing now, clinging to a man who was not her husband at all. But for some reason, it no longer seemed monstrous. "You're amazing," Ryan whispered, leaning close to her ear. "I didn't think the evening would be so pleasant." "You too," came from her lips before she had time to think. She was truly grateful to him and fascinated by his manner. Ryan held her a little tighter as he danced, and Victoria did not object. The music stopped and the couples began to disperse. Ryan didn't immediately let Victoria go, and when he let go, his hand slid along her back so that she got goosebumps. She suddenly realized that she was breathing faster than usual. It seemed like the air in the hall became hotter, or was it an internal fire? "I think it's time to go home," she said, trying to regain her seriousness. "It's already late." "As you say, darling," Ryan smiles, hugging her shoulders. "I'll arrange for the car." Victoria ran her hand over her forehead. She felt stuffy, and the picture around her seemed to float slightly. She leaned against the back of the chair for a second. Chloe walked past and cheerfully touched her on the elbow. "Everything is fine. You are so great today. I saw how you danced." "Well, just a picture. Everyone believed it, I guarantee it." "Are you satisfied?" "Yes." Victoria drawled, and her own voice seemed to her as if from the outside. I'm just a little tired. Are you going now? Well, you deserve a rest, Chloe winked. I'll stay for a while, chat with one client, so I probably won't detain you. My driver will take you. I will contact him later. Victoria nodded, not quite grasping the meaning of what was said. She desperately wanted fresh air. Ryan came up and hugged her, turning to Chloe. Thank you for everything, Chloe. I think we can get there ourselves. No problem, she responded, hugging goodbye first Victoria, then him. Take care of our queen, Mr. Hayes, she added with comic severity. Of course, Ryan smiles, not a step away from her. Victoria felt him take her arm. She automatically said goodbye to someone else she knew, and soon she and Ryan left the room. The fresh air of the night hit their faces as they stepped out onto the hotel porch. Victoria's head was spinning, but it became easier to breathe. A car pulled up and Ryan put her in the back seat, sliding in behind her. As soon as the doors closed, the silence of the salon cut them off from the noise of the party. Victoria closed her eyes for a second. My temples were throbbing, and there was a strange ache in my chest. She thought about the right way to thank Ryan and say goodbye to go home, lie down in a cool bed, and come to her senses. However, the car started moving, and she was surprised to realize that she had dozed off for several minutes. Victoria woke up when she felt a touch on her hand. Ryan held her hand in his and quietly called, Victoria. Victoria, is everything okay? She blinked, trying to focus on him. Yes, sorry, I think I'm tired, she muttered. We've already arrived, he said softly. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind drinking some tea or water to calm down before you go home. I live literally a block from here. Victoria did not immediately understand the meaning. She looked around. The car had indeed stopped, but it was not near her house. There was a quiet city courtyard around. Where are we? She asked. This is my home, Ryan explained, or rather, an apartment. Just for a minute, I promise. You don't look very good, you're tired. Drink some water, and I'll take you further. Victoria wanted to object, to say that she had better go home straight away. But the word stuck. Severe weakness came again, and my mouth was really dry. It was as if my head was being pulled together by a tight hoop. Okay, maybe some water, she barely managed to say. That's great, he helped her get out of the car. Victoria staggered, and Ryan immediately supported her by the elbow. Carefully, everything is fine. Victoria's eyes saw double. She saw Ryan's profile against the backdrop of the entrance lights, and everything seemed blurry, unclear. She couldn't concentrate. Ryan took her arm tighter and almost led her to the door. As if in a fog, she noticed how he said something to the guard at the entrance and received a key card. Elevator, corridor. With difficulty, clinging to the carpet with her heels, she walked with him to the apartment. The door closed behind them. Ryan flicked the switch, flooding the hallway with soft light. Come in, make yourself at home, he said, taking off his jacket. I'll get some water now. Victoria barely understood what was happening. She leaned back against the wall, trying to stop the dizziness. Dark spots swam before my eyes. I don't feel good, she whispered. Now, honey, everything will be fine now, she heard Ryan's voice from somewhere deep in the apartment. He returned a second later with a glass. Drink it, you'll feel better. She took a couple sips of water. Water flowed down her chin because Victoria's hand was shaking. Ryan brought the glass to her lips and helped her drink. Then he tenderly wiped the corners of her mouth with a handkerchief. Thank you, she whispered, feeling mentally tired. She wanted to close her eyes and fall asleep right there on the floor. But Ryan put his arm around her shoulders and led her further. Come on, sit down on the sofa. A lady cannot stand in the hallway. She obediently allowed herself to be led into the living room and sat down on the soft sofa. My head cleared up a little from the water, but my whole body felt groggy and my thoughts were confused. Ryan sat down next to him. He no longer looked like the impeccable gentleman from the reception. His gaze became different, predatory and appraising. Victoria caught this through the veil, and something sank inside her. She tried to get up, but Ryan put his hand on her shoulder, stopping her. "Lie down, relax," he said quietly. "You need to rest. You're so tense." "No, I think I'll go home," she said uncertainly, trying to maintain her dignity. But the voice sounded pitiful. She tried to move away from his hand, but he unexpectedly quickly pressed her back, hugging her waist with his other hand. "Victoria," he breathed into her face. "Why rush? The night is just beginning." She felt his hot breath mixed with the aroma of alcohol and perfume. Victoria tensed. "No, please," she blurted out, but the next moment his lips covered hers. The world has shaken. She tried to press her palms against his chest, but her hands felt like they were filled with lead. My head was spinning. A strange numbness was creeping through my body. Only my heart was pounding desperately, and panic was rising in my throat. The kiss was hard, forceful. Ethan's face from the photograph on the nightstand swam before his mind's eye. "Ethan, no." Victoria groaned, either in protest or in despair, but Ryan interpreted it in his own way. He pressed himself against her, laying her down on the sofa, breathing heavily. His hands slid over her body, easily finding the clasp of her dress on the back. "Relax, you'll like it," he muttered, peppering her neck with kisses. Tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't even really resist. Consciousness floated into the darkness. The last thing she remembered before falling into unconsciousness was how someone else's hot palms were sliding over her skin and how her own voice was drowning in her throat, unable to cry out her husband's name. A few blocks from Ryan's house, in the dark interior of a parked car, the screen of a smartphone was glowing. Chloe sat in the driver's seat and stared intently at the messages. Finally, the phone vibrated, and a new message from Ryan appeared on the display. "Everything is according to plan. I have it. Good night." The corners of Chloe's lips twitched into a satisfied grin. She turned off the screen and sat back, feeling adrenaline rushing through her veins. Step one of her plan was a perfect success. All that remained was to wait for the development of events. Chloe allowed herself a quiet, happy laugh in the emptiness of the car. Victoria did not even suspect that she had put her fate in her hands. "Well, friend, let's see how strong you are without your ideal little world," Chloe said in a whisper in the silence, then turned the ignition key. The engine purred softly. Chloe pulled out onto a deserted night street and disappeared into the darkness, flying towards her revenge. The pain seeped into consciousness gradually. Victoria felt a dull pulsation in her temples and an unpleasant dryness in her mouth. She lay with her eyes closed, trying not to move, as if this could delay the moment of meeting reality. The bed seemed alien. The sheets smelled not of her usual powder, but of some strong cologne and tobacco. Under her fingers, she felt a rough fabric, not the soft silk of her own underwear. My heart sank painfully. She was not at home. Memories of last night came flooding back in fragments. Flashes of light, music, strong hands on her body. Victoria winced and slowly opened her eyes. An unfamiliar ceiling was white above her. From the side, grayish morning light penetrated through the slightly open curtain. My head was still spinning and pounding at the same time. She tried to prop herself up on her elbow. The body responded with aching weakness. Her back and hips ached, as if she had spent the night in the cold or had done a hard workout. At the same time, she discovered that she was wearing only underwear. There was no dress, only a tangled blanket covering her legs. She noticed a red spot on her wrist, either a bruise or a mark from someone's fingers. Victoria froze, staring at this mark. My heart began to pound somewhere in my throat. All doubts of the last seconds were dispelled. The disaster really happened. Movement was heard nearby. Victoria turned her head sharply. On the other side of the wide bed, Ryan was sleeping on his back, arms outstretched. The blanket slid down to his waist, revealing his muscular torso. He was breathing regularly. His face in the morning twilight seemed calm, almost serene, like that of a man who had slept well and was not tormented by remorse. Victoria caught her breath from a flash of humiliation and horror. She carefully, trying not to make a sound, pulled off the blanket and lowered her feet to the floor. She looked around for her dress. It was lying in a heap at the foot of the bed. The shoes were nearby. Gathering her will, Victoria quietly stood up. The room shook. I had to hold on to the wall, but panic gave me strength. She stepped towards the dress and bent down, picking it up. The fabric was wrinkled, with the zipper torn at the back. Tears appeared in her eyes, but Victoria brushed them away with the back of her hand. Now is not the time to cry. Ryan muttered something in his sleep and stirred. Victoria froze, clutching the dress in her hands. Several painfully long seconds he did not wake up. Then she, on tiptoe, hurriedly walked towards the door, trying not to look in the direction of the sleeping man. Slipping out into the corridor, she quietly closed the bedroom door. Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed to echo under the arches of the empty apartment. I had to run away from here immediately. She quickly pulled on the dress right in the corridor, unable to fiddle with the broken clasp. The dress didn't hold up well, slipping off her shoulder, but that was the least of her problems. Quietly, almost by touch, Victoria reached the exit. In the hallway, she noticed her small, shiny clutch bag on the nightstand. Inside was a phone and house keys. She grabbed her purse and checked her phone. Several missed calls from Ethan and one message from late at night. "How are you? I'm worried. Answer me." My heart sank with guilt. Victoria quickly typed a short answer. "Chloe's. Everything is okay. I'll be home soon." After sending the message, she quietly unlocked the front door and left Ryan's apartment, trying not to even breathe until the door finally closed behind her. Once at the entrance, she rushed down the stairs without even waiting for the elevator, as if fleeing a burning building. On the street, Victoria greedily breathed in the cool morning air. A pale dawn was breaking over the city. In the rear windows of high-rise buildings, the lights were just coming on. The city was waking up. But for Victoria this night, it seemed, did not end in a nightmare. She walked along the sidewalk, trying to stay in the shadows of the houses. From the top of the hill, I could see the bay and the sparkling lights of the Oakland Bay Bridge on the horizon. Usually this view calmed her, reminding her of the beauty of her native San Francisco. But now everything inside is cold with horror and shame. The streets were almost empty in the early hours. Several cleaning vehicles drove by, washing away the remnants of the night from the asphalt. Victoria looked around in alarm, but of course no one she knew was nearby. Strange passers-by did not pay attention to her. Finally, a free taxi appeared on the corner, and she waved her hand. A minute later, the yellow car smoothly slowed down on the sidewalk. "Where are we going?" the driver asked, looking at her in the mirror. Victoria gave the address of her house, trying to speak clearly. The driver leaned back in his seat, and the car started moving. Only then did she allow herself to cover her face with her hands. Tears, suppressed before, poured out, burning helplessly on the palms. She sobbed silently, so that the driver would not notice anything. An icy emptiness filled my chest. How did she even get to this point? I remembered the warning words of an inner voice yesterday morning. What am I doing? Then, having agreed to the deception, she could not even imagine how everything would turn out. Now I felt like I had fallen to nowhere. 10 minutes later, the taxi stopped at her house. Victoria managed to pull herself together. She paid, avoiding the driver's gaze, and got out of the car. Trying to walk straight, she entered the entrance and went up to her floor. Ethan was already waiting for her near the door. He stood in the open doorway, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, clearly worried. Seeing his wife, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank God. Vic, I was already thinking about going to see you and Chloe. You didn't answer at night." Victoria stopped in front of him, feeling shame burning her soul. She looked away. Her hair was disheveled, her dress was put on haphazardly, and she clutched her clutch to her chest like a shield. She realized that she looked terrible and hastened to start making excuses. "Sorry. We were kept late there. After the official party, there was a party. I drank too much, and Chloe said that it was better for me to spend the night with her so as not to drive across the whole city in this state. I didn't want to wake you up and decided to stay. The phone is dead. I'm sorry for worrying you." The words flowed confusingly. Victoria offered the first plausible set of explanations that came to mind. My heart was pounding. She was afraid to look her husband in the eyes, fearing that everything could be seen from her. Ethan was silent for several seconds. Then he gently pulled her towards him and hugged her. "Everything is fine. I'm glad you're okay," he said quietly, stroking her back. "I couldn't find a place for myself. Next time just call, even if it's late." I was worried. The warmth of his hands and gentle voice made Victoria's nose tingle. She clung to her husband, feeling like the last scoundrel. He was worried, and she cheated on him last night. Even if it happened beyond her control, the fact remained a fact. She tarnished their marriage, and she couldn't say anything about it. "I'm sorry," was all Victoria could whisper, closing her eyes tightly. Ethan thought she was apologizing for disturbing her and just hugged her tighter. For several minutes, they simply stood silently, hugging each other. Finally, Victoria quietly said that she wanted to come to her senses and take a shower. Ethan carefully released her and nodded. "Of course, rest, dear," he said softly. Closing the bathroom door behind her, Victoria burst into tears loudly, giving vent to all her guilt and horror for the first time. The sound of the water drowned out her sobs. She almost tore off her crumpled clothes and stood under the hot streams. It seemed that no amount of temperature could wash away the sticky feeling of dirt from her body. She rubbed her skin with a washcloth until it was red and painful, as if trying to erase the memory of someone else's touches. Tears mixed with water. Victoria didn't know how long she spent in the shower. Finally, her strength left her. She sank to the tiled floor, wrapped her arms around herself, and sat there while silent tears flowed from her eyes. The world was falling apart, and she didn't know how to pick up the pieces. So they stood in the doorway for several long seconds, while Victoria tried not to burst into tears again on his chest. A few hours later, closer to noon, Victoria was sitting in Chloe's kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea. She immediately called her friend as soon as she could come to her senses at home. Ethan, making sure that his wife was okay, left on business. He needed to pick up equipment from the base after a night of training. Victoria, citing a desire to personally thank Chloe for her shelter, went to her, barely waiting for the door to close behind her husband. Now, sitting opposite her friend, she felt like the thin thread of self-control was about to break. Chloe looked at her carefully over her cup of latte. The clock ticked quietly in the kitchen, the sun shining through the curtain, casting a rectangle of light on the table between them. "Well, tell me what happened," Chloe said softly. "You sounded like something terrible had happened." Victoria's lips trembled. She averted her gaze to the window. In the courtyard, the life of the unsuspecting neighbors went on as usual. The children were playing, someone was walking the dog. How unfair it is, everyone is fine, but her world is collapsing. Gathering her courage, she said quietly, "After we left, that night, I woke up at Ryan's, in his apartment. She swallowed the lump that had risen in her throat and squeezed out. We slept together." Chloe slowly put the cup down on the table. Shock showed on her face. "What? Victoria? How? Are you sure?" Victoria smiled bitterly through the tears that began to gather in the corners of her eyes again. "I'm sure," she whispered. "I woke up in his bed, practically without clothes. He was sleeping next to me. All the signs were there. I remember almost nothing after that cocktail. I only remember." She took a deep breath. "I remember how we danced. Then in the car. Fragments. And then darkness. I don't know how. How could I? What came over me? I would never." His voice broke. Chloe walked around the table and sat down next to her, putting her arm around her friend's shoulders. Victoria buried her face in her shoulder, not holding back her sobs. They sat like that for a minute, after which Chloe spoke quietly. "Listen, honey, I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry this happened. I thought Ryan was a decent guy. Of course, adults can be tipsy, but to take advantage of you in this state, it's disgusting." Victoria raised her reddened eyes. "That is, do you think he took advantage? What am I?" She swallowed. "That it's not me. It's him." Chloe sighed and gently stroked her disheveled hair. You say you don't remember much. You were probably almost unconscious. A normal man would take you home or at least leave you to sleep alone. So yeah, I think he crossed the line and took advantage of the situation. And as a friend, I feel terribly guilty. After all, it was I who brought him. I just couldn't foresee. She bit her lip, feigning bitter regret. Victoria shook her head. It's not your fault. It was I who agreed to all this deception and drank a damn cocktail. I should have left immediately after the reception. If I hadn't allowed myself to be persuaded to dance, drink. She squeezed her temples with her palms. God, how disgusting. I think I still don't fully understand what I've done. Don't beat yourself up like that, Chloe said softly. You are trapped by circumstances. Yes, everything got out of control. But now the main thing is what you are going to do next. Victoria straightened up, wiping away her tears. The question sounded scary. What to do next? She was afraid to even think about it. The shoulders sagged helplessly. I don't know. I just don't know. Ethan. At her husband's name, everything inside her broke off. He will never forgive me for this. If he finds out, it's the end. He will leave me. Tears began to shine in her eyes again. Chloe shook her head and took Victoria's hands. Quietly, let's be honest. If you tell him, he'll leave. If you don't tell him, he'll probably never know. Are you sure you need to confess to him? Put yourself in his place. The truth will only destroy him. Sometimes it's better not to know. Moreover, she hesitated for a second, especially if it didn't happen according to your will. Victoria thought about it. The friend's words sounded attractive. Don't talk, save the marriage, forget like a bad dream. But could she lie like this? Every time you look your husband in the eyes, remember that you cheated on him, even if accidentally. She closed her eyes tiredly. I don't know. I just don't know if I can, she whispered. Chloe hugged her and rocked her a little, like a child. Can. I'll help. We won't tell anyone. This will remain between us. Now you just need to come to your senses. Everything will be fine, do you hear? Just don't make any sudden movements. Ethan loves you. If he doesn't find out, then you will simply move on as if nothing happened. Over time, it will become easier for you, really. Victoria nodded silently, not having the strength to argue. Perhaps Chloe is right. Confessing now will ruin everything completely. But living with this knowledge was torture. She remembered her husband's strong hugs in the morning, his care, and a wave of self-loathing washed over her again. If only it were possible to turn back time. But this is impossible. There is only one thing left to do: pretend that nothing happened. By the way, Chloe began quietly after a short silence. I was thinking, Vic, you. Well, in general, you need to take measures just in case. You're not sure that he, used protection. Sorry to say this, but Victoria turned pale, realizing what her friend meant. Yeah, Chloe continued, I think you should take a remedy to avoid. Well, Victoria swallowed. Until that moment, she simply did not have time to think about the risk of an unwanted pregnancy. The mental pain was too great. Now a new fear has come flooding back. She and Ethan weren't planning children yet. Work was absorbing her, and he didn't mind waiting. She was not taking birth control. If pregnancy results from that night, she covered her face with her hands. Lord, you're right, she whispered. How could I not think? Chloe immediately jumped up and rushed to the bathroom. When she returned, she handed Victoria a package of emergency contraceptive pills. Hold it. I just had it as a spare. It needs to be taken as soon as possible to be sure. Victoria looked at her friend with gratitude and opened the package with shaking hands. After washing down the pill with a sip of cooled tea, she felt at least some relief. At least one more potential disaster might be over. And one more thing. Chloe added uncertainty, lowering her eyes. Maybe you should check with a doctor, just in case. I don't want to scare you, but you never know. Suddenly this guy, well, you understand. Victoria turned paler. She thought about the diseases that a casual relationship could bring. So many years of a prosperous life collapsed in one night of shame. Yes, she said weakly. Probably worth it. Chloe nodded. If you want, I can find a good doctor in confidence. Or go with you. But most likely there is nothing. Don't beat yourself up ahead of time. It's just better to be sure. Such foresight of her friend touched Victoria. She smiled faintly. Thank you. You care about me very much. Yes, that's probably right. I'll go and get tested. For your own peace of mind. Having hugged Chloe again and enlisted her support, Victoria left her friend's apartment a little calmer, but still just as depressed. Now she had to move on with her life, pretending that nothing had happened. This scared her, but she saw no other way out. At night, she slept poorly, waking up from nightmares. Every night her own hell opened up. She dreamed that she was drowning in a black quagmire, and someone's invisible hands were pulling her to the bottom. Then Chloe's ringing laughter could be heard, echoing in the empty hall, where Victoria was calling in vain for help. Then suddenly Ethan would appear in front of her, turning away and walking away, no matter how much she shouted after him. Sometimes she imagined heavy hands squeezing her throat, or she saw Ethan's face, distorted by pain, shouting, "Traitor." Victoria didn't tell anyone about what happened except Chloe. She behaved emphatically evenly in front of her husband, although a little coldly. Ethan noticed that she became withdrawn and asked if everything was okay, but she chalked it all up to stress from work. Victoria reacted painfully to his attempts at intimacy. She referred to malaise or fatigue. One night, waking up in a cold sweat from yet another nightmare, she found Ethan gently waking her up, alarmed. I had to say that I dreamed about something related to work. He stroked her shoulder for a long time until she fell asleep again, and this affectionate gesture only made her feel worse. She felt like a deceiver. Ethan fell asleep again, and Victoria lay there for a long time, looking at the dark ceiling. The happy moments of their life flashed before their eyes. Here they are at that same Lake Tahoe last summer, she laughs, smeared with marshmallow cream by the fire, and he gently wipes her cheek and kisses her. Even earlier, their first meeting, Chloe brought her veteran acquaintance, withdrawn and gloomy, to the bar. Victoria had just completed an important deal and was washing off her success by generously treating everyone. Ethan sat aloof at first, but by the end of the evening, he started talking to her about hikes and the stars, and she didn't notice how dawn broke. From that day on, they never parted. Or the day when he proposed to her in the middle of a hiking trail, he didn't hesitate to get down on one knee with a ring, even in dirty hiking boots. She then cried with joy. At their wedding, Ethan looked at her with loving eyes at the altar and pronounced vows, from which the guests furtively brushed away tears. In health and illness, in joy and sorrow, until death do us part, she repeated after him, happy, confident that only joy awaited them ahead. The tears are still flowing. How could she betray all this? How can this be forgiven? Victoria bit her hand so as not to burst into tears out loud and whispered quietly, turning to her peacefully sleeping husband, "I'm so sorry." But he did not hear these words. But it was difficult to keep the perfect mask. One day in a meeting, she suddenly lost track of the conversation, staring at the presentation in front of her eyes, but not understanding a word. Colleagues looked at each other with concern, and the deputy carefully asked, "Victoria, is everything okay?" She caught herself and, turning pink, found some reason to laugh it off, but everything inside her grew cold. A little more and everyone would notice her condition. After that meeting, Victoria realized for the first time that this could not continue for long. A week later, Victoria finally decided to fulfill the promise she made to herself and Chloe. She visited a private clinic located on the other side of the city to get tested for infections. All these days, she lived in a fog, trying to function automatically. She went to work, held meetings, even smiled where necessary, but internally she seemed numb. In the waiting room, Victoria signed in under a false name. At the appointment, blushing with shame, she quietly told the doctor that unprotected sexual intercourse had taken place, and she would like to get checked. The doctor looked at Victoria over her glasses. "When did that contact take place?" Victoria lowered her eyes. "A week ago, approximately." The doctor shook her head. "It's a pity that you didn't contact me right away." In such cases, it is important to act in the first 72 hours. Now we can no longer carry out prevention, we will observe. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, get tested, and we'll see. Most infections in a single case are not transmitted so easily. Try not to stress yourself out yet. Victoria nodded weakly, although the doctor's words did not calm her soul. She barely managed to shake while the nurse took her blood. Having learned that a week had passed, the doctor restrainedly shook her head. If there was a risk, then she should have contacted her in the first 2 days. Now all she could do was wait and get checked. Victoria's mouth went dry when she heard the doctor's words. The diagnosis she was afraid to think about had not yet been announced, but the threat was clear. The doctor reassured her. With modern treatment, most problems can be solved, and now it's too early to draw conclusions. But Victoria smiled sadly. It's easy to say not to worry. It seemed to her that she had not stopped worrying for a minute since that terrible night. She left the clinic with weak legs. The results of most tests were promised to be sent by email in a couple of days. However, the HIV blood test will need to be repeated after a few weeks, and then after 3 months because too little time has passed. This uncertainty was most depressing. Victoria tried to reassure herself. The chance of catching something from a single case is small. Surely everything will be fine. But an inner voice alarmingly whispered the opposite. A few more days passed. Work and routine gradually drew Victoria in, allowing her to escape from her worries at least for a little while. The first test results arrived. No infections were detected. This was a little reassuring. True, the main question remained, but its solution took time. Victoria diligently drove away dark thoughts from herself. She focused on company projects and at home tried to be a calm and loving wife. Ethan, noticing the improvement in her mood, also cheered up. He wanted to believe that his wife's difficult period was over. Victoria herself began to gradually believe that the worst was over. Gradually, the nightmares became less frequent. She even allowed herself one night of intimacy with Ethan. After making sure that they were protecting themselves, the memory of what happened still stood between them, but she desperately tried to push it away. "This won't happen again, it's over," she said to herself, looking at her sleeping husband in the darkness of the night. But fate has already prepared a new blow. The phone call came in the middle of the working day. Victoria automatically glanced at the screen. Chloe. In recent weeks, her friend almost did not bother her unnecessarily, understanding Victoria's condition. That's why the call alarmed her. She apologized to her colleagues and went to the window of the open office. "Hey, Chloe, is something wrong?" she asked quietly, trying to hide her anxiety. Heavy breathing was heard on the phone. Then a friend's voice said, "Vic, we need to talk urgently. This is very important. Can you leave now?" Victoria's heart skipped a beat. "Now? I'm in the office. I have a call in half an hour. Can't it wait until tonight?" "It's better not," Chloe snapped. "True, this does not stand. I'll come to your office. We can go down to the cafe downstairs. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Before Victoria had time to answer, the connection was interrupted. She stood for several seconds with the phone in her hand, trying to calm down the panic that flared up. Chloe's extremely important tone clearly foreshadowed something was wrong. Is it really something else? Maybe Ryan told someone about what happened, or she didn't dare think of a thought. Having apologized to her colleagues again, Victoria slipped out of the office. Downstairs, in a small half-empty cafe, she sat down at the farm table, wringing her fingers under the table. My heart was beating in my throat. 20 endless minutes later, Chloe entered the cafe. She was pale, without makeup, and hastily threw her coat over her business dress. Noticing Victoria, she immediately headed towards her. She looked as if she was about to announce someone's death. "You're scaring me," Victoria muttered from the doorway when Chloe sat down opposite her. "Tell me what happened already." Chloe interlocked her fingers and moved closer, lowering her voice. "Promise that you will bear it calmly." But I couldn't help but say, "In general, this is about Ryan." At Ryan's name, Victoria's insides felt cold, as if thin ice had frozen her insides. She nodded uncertainty. "What about him?" Chloe swallowed and closed her eyes for a moment, as if making up her mind. Then she said in a barely audible voice, "I found out that he is HIV positive." The words did not immediately sink in. Victoria didn't even understand at first. "What?" she gasped. "Chloe, what did you say?" "Ryan is infected with the immunodeficiency virus." Chloe repeated a little louder. "HIV. He's sick." Victoria stared at her friend, not believing her own ears. My lips were numb. "Where? Who?" She tried to speak confusedly. "Where did you get this from?" Chloe impulsively took her hands across the table. "Vic, dear, I just found out myself. A mutual friend called me and said that there were rumors. I immediately tried to check, and it's true. I found confirmation. He has a support group on social networks where he shared his story a couple of years ago." She stopped short, seeing Victoria gradually turning pale as a sheet. "That's why I called you urgently. You should know." Reality seemed to have cracked and chipped. Victoria felt that she was about to lose consciousness. She pulled her hands out from under Chloe's and pressed them to her mouth. "No, no, no," she whispered in horror. "This can't be. This is some kind of mistake. I was afraid that you would react like that. But Vic, this is not a mistake," Chloe said softly but firmly. "I'm sorry that I dragged you into this story then. I swear I didn't know that about him. If I had known, I would never have. Like is for justice. Subscription to be with us because we tell what is important." Further words were drowned in the noise of blood rushing into Victoria's head. She pulled away from the table and jumped up, staggering. "I need some air," she whispered, gasping for breath. It swam before my eyes, just like that night. Chloe rushed to support her. "Come on, I'll go out with you," she said quickly. "Be careful." They walked out of the stuffy cafe onto the street. Victoria breathed in greedily, but the air did not provide relief. The world was spinning. "Let's sit down." Chloe sat her down on a bench at the entrance, holding her by the shoulders. "Breathe. Deeper. Like this." Victoria took a frantic breath and exhaled once, twice. Gradually, my consciousness became clearer. She turned to her friend, her eyes wide with horror. "I'm infected. Chloe, I'm now." The voice broke. "This is deadly. God. Ethan." She sobbed. "I could have him too." Victoria screamed, strangled, and covered her face with her hands. Chloe hugged her, rocking her. "Hush, hush. This is not fatal, do you hear? Now they live with it. The main thing is to start treatment immediately and be observed. I will help you with everything, but first you need to make sure. You said you took tests. When are the results?" "In a couple of weeks again." Victoria whispered through her fingers. "We need to do it faster," Chloe said decisively. "There are special tests. They can show it earlier. You need to go and donate blood for PCR. It will become clear right away. The sooner you find out, the sooner you can start therapy if necessary." Victoria lowered her hands and stared blankly in front of her. She wanted to wake up from this nightmare. "Chloe is right, we need to act, but I didn't have the strength." She trembled with small tremors. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, honey, I know," Chloe said, stroking her back. "Listen, the most important thing now is your health. Everything else comes later. There's one more thing." She hesitated. Victoria had difficulty focusing her gaze on her friend's face. "What thing?" she asked in a lifeless voice. Chloe sighed. "Ethan, you need to tell him the truth. Straight away. He needs to get checked too. You understand, right?" At the sound of her husband's name, Victoria gasped as if struck. "No." She blurted out automatically. Telling Ethan would have meant ruining everything with my own hands. But now destruction was already inevitable. She was infected, probably. How could she endanger him, the person she loved? If they were close after that night. The thought that she could pass on a deadly virus to him was unbearable. "Vic, he has the right to know," Chloe continued softly but persistently. "If you love him, you should tell him. His health may also be at risk. Even if the chance is small, he should get checked and be careful. Victoria closed her eyes. Everything inside was screaming in pain. But Chloe was right. As creepy as it is, Ethan should know. She had no right to remain silent, risking his life. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she barely nodded, making the terrible decision. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Victoria didn't remember how she returned to work, what she said on the call, or how she got home. Consciousness feverishly repeated one thought: I need to tell Ethan, and at the same time, how to live after this. Ethan returned earlier than usual. When he entered, she was sitting in the living room on the sofa, clutching the phone in her hands. She wanted to call him and tell him everything without seeing his eyes. But that would be too mean. Here he is in front of her tall, dear, beloved. He smiles when he sees his wife at home earlier. Hello, Vic. How was your day? You're early today. He leaned down to kiss her, but Victoria involuntarily pulled away. Ethan froze in surprise, looking at her. We need to talk, she managed. Your own words echoed in someone else's ears. The smile slowly faded from the husband's face. He silently sat down next to me. It was obvious that he was seriously alarmed. What's happened? You're scaring me, he said quietly. Victoria felt a lump in her throat. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. She just opened and closed her mouth like a fish, and tears were already burning her eyes. Ethan grabbed her hand. Vic, hey, you're crying. Come on, tell me, no matter what, we'll figure it out together. He tried to cheer her up, but there were notes of panic in his voice. He had never seen his wife in such a state before. Victoria couldn't stand it. Bursting into tears, she blurted out in a trembling voice, I cheated on you, Ethan. It seemed as if time itself had stopped for a moment. Ethan did not immediately understand the meaning of the words, as if she spoke in a foreign language. He even unclenched his fingers, letting go of her hand. What? How? He whispered. Victoria covered her face with her palms. We must continue to speak while we have the strength. That evening, remember the gala reception, you couldn't come. She began through tears. I took one person with me, instead of you. We deceived everyone. I thought it was just for show, but after the reception, she sobbed. I was drunk, I didn't understand anything, and I woke up in his bed. At the last phrase, her voice almost broke into a whisper. Ethan sat thunderstruck, looking at her with all his eyes. The silence lasted for several seconds, which seemed like an eternity. Finally, he said hoarsely, What? Person, who did you take instead of me? Ryan, Chloe's acquaintance. She answered automatically. You don't know him. Ethan jumped up and walked around, running his fingers through his hair. He began to understand, and with every word his face darkened. So, instead of going alone, you decided to hire some guy to impersonate me. His voice broke into a scream. Damn it, Victoria. He hit the closet door with his fist. And after the reception you slept with him? Victoria shrugged. I was out of my mind. Drunk. It seems he mixed something in. She babbled. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't mean it, Ethan. But it happened. He barked, turning around. His face was distorted by a grimace of anger and pain. A month has passed, Victoria. Month, and you were silent all this time, looking into my eyes. He smiled bitterly. What, you hoped I would never find out? Victoria stood up, trying to approach him. I'm sorry. Forgive me. She sobbed. I was afraid. I couldn't. I wanted to forget on my own. I thought I could handle it. But everything got out of control. Ethan stepped back, raising his hand as if to defend himself from her approach. Don't come closer, he said harshly. She froze in place. She saw such pain in his eyes that she wanted to die on the spot. That's not all, she whispered with trembling lips. He exhaled in shock, his eyes widening. Is there anything worse? He shouted. What could be worse, Victoria? She closed her eyes, gathering her courage for the final blow. That man, Ryan, he's sick, HIV. She blurted out, then hastily added, I don't know for sure if I'm infected. I got tested, but there's a chance. There's a chance that I... She didn't have time to finish. Ethan was there in an instant. He grabbed her roughly by the shoulders and turned her towards him, peering into her face as if he hoped to find a lie there. "What did you say? HIV? God?" He let her go, recoiling as if from a flame. "Did you? Did you get infected with this? And she slept with me all this time?" "No, no," Victoria cried. "I didn't sleep with you without. That is, we took precautions. I took care." She was confused, seeing his horror. "I only found out today. I came right away. I... I'll get checked. Maybe everything will be okay." Ethan covered his face with his hands for a second, then took them away and muttered through his teeth. "Get out." Victoria stopped breathing. "What?" Ethan nodded towards the door, his eyes sparkling. "You, out. From my home. Now." "But this is my home too." She hesitantly tried to object. "No," he shook his head, suddenly becoming frighteningly calm. "Not now. Pack what you need and leave. I can't see you." "Ethan, beloved, forgive me." She began, walking towards him with outstretched hands. He pulled away, his eyes flashing with anger. "Don't you dare call me beloved. You ruined everything, Victoria." "All. How could you?" The voice broke. "I risked my life for this country, but right under my nose I didn't see that the person closest to me was betraying me. How many times have you lied to me this month? Every day, right?" Victoria cried, trying to touch him. He pushed her hands away. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry," she repeated through her tears. "There is no forgiveness for you," he snapped harshly. "I loved you more than life itself, and you." His voice trembled, he stopped, but pulled himself together and continued sharply. "I don't want to hear any more lies and excuses. It's over." He turned around and walked towards the exit, grabbing his jacket and car keys from the hangar. "Where are you going?" she shouted in despair. "As far away from you as possible," he said over his shoulder. The door slammed and his footsteps quickly retreated down the corridor. A moment later, Victoria heard the engine of his SUV roar in the street. Ethan drove away quickly, decisively, taking out the pain on the gas pedal. Victoria rushed after her, ran out onto the landing barefoot, but only managed to see the entrance door slam below. She didn't dare run after him. She had no more words left, only sobs. The world has completely collapsed. Victoria sat for a long time on the cold steps of the entrance, sobbing, covering her face with her hands. Finally, sobbing and staggering, she returned to the empty apartment. Everything here reminded me of my husband. His jacket on the back of the chair, the cup on the table. But he himself was not there, and perhaps he would never be around again. From this thought, Victoria burst into tears with renewed vigor. She didn't know how much time had passed, minutes, hours. At some point, another emotion began to sprout in my consciousness: anger. Not on Ethan, he was just as much a victim as she was. Anger at circumstances, at injustice, and at myself. But at the same time, strange inconsistencies also emerged. Her thoughts raced chaotically, returning to key moments. The ill-fated cocktail that night, after which she did not remember anything. Chloe's words, "I didn't know, I swear." But where did such a person come from then, with a secret illness, who ruined her life? Victoria ran a trembling hand through her tangled hair. No, it couldn't have been an accident. Ethan was right. She herself let the snakes into her paradise, but someone skillfully took advantage of this. An image flashed before my mind's eye. Chloe is standing at the column and smiling slyly, watching her dance with Ryan. The glass that her friend thrust into her hands. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the rise of anger. Is this all? On purpose? The idea? And what if Chloe knew about Ryan's illness from the very beginning? Incredible. But how else can one explain the hellish game of chance that a stranger, whom a friend advised to her, turned out to be a carrier of HIV? Anger gave me strength. Victoria jumped up. You should have looked Chloe in the eyes. Asked directly, did she know or not? A friend whom she trusted like a sister. If all this time there was betrayal lurking behind her back, it was even worse than her husband's betrayal. Because her husband did not betray her, she herself let him down. But Chloe, Victoria's chest heaved heavily. She walked over to the table where her phone lay and thought for a moment. Then she unlocked the screen, opened the desired application, quietly said into the emptiness of the room, "Let's see who is the victim here and who is the puppet master," and headed towards the exit. About 20 minutes later, she was already knocking on the door of Chloe's apartment. My friend opened it almost immediately. Apparently, she was waiting for news. There was concern on her face, but Victoria saw the tension behind this mask. They looked at each other silently for several seconds. Finally, Chloe said quietly, "Vic, how are you? Where is Ethan?" Victoria looked straight into her eyes and suddenly noticed with disgust that the concern on her friend's face was somehow insincere, feigned. "Ethan left," she answered dully. "Forever, it seems." Chloe gasped theatrically and rushed to hug her. "God, Vic, hold on. I was so worried. I didn't know that he would react so sharply. How did it all go?" Victoria stood without returning the hug. When Chloe pulled back, she asked firmly, "Did you know about Ryan from the very beginning?" Chloe was taken aback. "What? What are you talking about?" "Stop it," Victoria said abruptly. "Did she know or not that he is HIV positive?" Chloe turned visibly pale. "No, how can you? I told you, I just found out today." "Is it true?" Victoria crossed her arms over her chest. "It looks like you knew very well who you were putting in front of me." "What?" Chloe's eyes lit up. "Are you blaming me, or what? After everything I've done for you?" "What have you done for me?" Victoria asked with emphasis. "Helped destroy my marriage. Arranged for me to be dragged into bed and infected. Is this what you call help?" Chloe turned purple. "Victoria, how dare you?" She exhaled angrily. "Only you bear all responsibility for what happened. Do you hear? If it weren't for your paranoia about your reputation and your reluctance to solve problems honestly, none of this would have happened. So it's my fault?" Victoria hissed. "Interesting. You just sympathized so much and said that I was a victim of circumstances. Well, go ahead. Tell me that I made it all up." "Don't get it wrong," Chloe said, nervously wringing her fingers. "That's not what I meant." "What then?" Victoria did not back down, not taking her burning gaze off her. "Better admit it right away. It was you who got me drunk then, right? That evening. Cocktail. It was you who slipped some kind of rubbish to make me switch off." Chloe lifted her chin. "Nonsense. This is nonsense. You were drunk as a cobbler, Vic. I wanted the best for you to relax, have fun. How could I have known that you would have such a reaction?" "Oh, the reaction." Victoria smiled bitterly. "A very convenient reaction, isn't it? I'm passed out, do whatever you want with me." "Admit it, Chloe. Did you set this up? For what?" "I want to know why." She almost shouted out the last words, feeling how everything was bubbling inside. Chloe was also seriously turned on. She clenched her fists, her lips trembled with anger. "For what?" "Because you deserve it." She finally blurted out. "You, Miss Perfection, Miss Success. You had everything: a brilliant career, money, an adoring husband. And you didn't even notice how hard it was for others around you. Victoria Hayes is always in the spotlight, a business genius, an ideal wife. I've always been compared to you my whole life. That's why you're not like Vicky? Vicky this, Vicky that. I'm tired of being in your Majesty's shadow." Victoria froze, stunned by her friend's sudden outburst of rage. Chloe could no longer control herself, pouring out her painful thoughts. "And Ethan. Ethan is a completely different story. Did you know that I was in love with him?" "No, of course I didn't know. You didn't even care. He was my friend for so long. I brought him to you, and I regretted him 1,000 times. As soon as he looked at you, you snatched the best piece again. You got married, you have happiness, love, and I am again alone, on the sidelines, watching your sweet life. How tired I am of all this." Chloe breathed heavily, pouring out her heart. Victoria listened as if to someone else's voices. She did not believe that it was her close friend who was saying such terrible things. "So you decided to destroy me," she said quietly, not feeling her lips. "I wanted to put you in your place," Chloe replied harshly, "so you can feel what it's like to lose everything." How I haven't had what you have all my life, and I achieved my goal, she smiled wryly, looking at her friend with a contemptuous look. Your husband left, your career is over, the board of directors is probably already whispering. I also picked up such a sore now try living with the stigma. Let's see what loud speeches you will make at conferences. Who are you now without your perfect mask? Society doesn't feel sorry for people like you. Victoria looked at Chloe, and a feeling of pity suddenly flooded her. Not to herself, to this angry, unhappy woman whom she called her friend. Chloe was wrong. Society will not feel sorry for her when the truth is revealed. The tears in my eyes dried up. Victoria straightened up to her full height. Are you finished? She asked coldly. Chloe stopped short, as if only now realizing that she had said too much. Vic, She blinked, collecting herself. Listen, yes, maybe I went too far. But you have to understand, I've been holding on to this resentment for so many years. I didn't mean to hurt you, truly. I just wanted to restore justice. Victoria didn't listen anymore. She suddenly became incredibly disgusted to be around. She silently turned around and headed towards the exit. Victoria, came Chloe's excited voice. Where are you going? Wait. We discussed everything. You can handle it. I'll help you, honestly. She tried to grab Victoria's hand, but she sharply pulled it towards her. Don't you dare, she said contemptuously. Touch me again, and I'll kill you. You are no longer my friend, and pray that we never meet again. Chloe flushed. What, are you threatening me now? Who will believe you? Do you think everyone will know it's me? You have no proof. Victoria chuckled and, without turning around, stepped over the threshold. We'll see, she said quietly. The door slammed in Chloe's astonished face. 3 months later, Victoria stood behind the scenes of the conference room, clutching a piece of paper with notes for the speech. She was supposed to be announced in a minute. Judging by the roar, several hundred people gathered in the hall: journalists, activists, business partners, and simply sympathizers. Today, she was going to tell her story publicly for the first time. Over the past months, she has changed slightly in appearance. She has become slimmer and cut her previously long hair into a strict bob. And although her facial features were sharpened by the experience, her gaze was firm and calm. Over the past months, Victoria's life has turned upside down completely and irrevocably. After that terrible night of exposure and a series of losses, she thought that she would not be able to rise. But one day, waking up in the ward of the infectious diseases clinic, where she had gone to confirm the diagnosis and begin treatment, she heard laughter in the corridor, childish, ringing. A stroller with a little girl, about 8 years old, bald after chemotherapy, drove past her room. The child laughed at the nurse's joke, and Victoria experienced a shock. If this girl can enjoy life despite her misfortune, then can she, an adult woman, not find the strength to fight? The diagnosis was confirmed. Victoria was infected with HIV. It seemed like the end of the world. But the doctors immediately convinced her that with modern treatment she could live a long, fulfilling life. She had to take daily therapy and be monitored regularly, but it was not fatal. The hardest thing was to accept it psychologically. During the first weeks, she wandered around the rented apartment. After Ethan left, she moved, unable to live in their previous home, and avoided all contact. It seemed to her that there was a stigma, shame, dirt on her. A psychologist from the Center for Supporting Victims of Violence provided invaluable assistance. Yes, she finally managed to call a spade a spade. She became a victim of planned violence, and I had to stop blaming myself. Realizing this did not bring back my husband and my past life, but it gave me strength to build a new one. Victoria agreed to cooperate with the investigation. Based on her statement, a criminal case was opened against Ryan Cole for deliberately infecting another person with the immunodeficiency virus. True, Ryan himself had disappeared by that time. He probably managed to leave for fear of publicity. But this was already a matter for the police. Victoria also filed a lawsuit against Chloe for conspiracy to cause grievous bodily harm and reputation. There was already ironclad evidence, a recording of their conversation made on the phone, where Chloe actually admitted to a deliberate frame-up. When this story came out, the ex-girlfriend faced public condemnation and shame. The trial was now coming to an end. Chloe faced serious financial and criminal consequences. Her personal and professional reputation was destroyed, she lost her job. Many mutual acquaintances turned their backs on her. Irony of fate. In plotting to destroy Victoria, Chloe ended up destroying her own life. As for Victoria, she decided to channel her pain into a creative direction. Thanks in part to the insistence of the same psychologist and investigator, she agreed to give an interview about her experience. The story received a wide response. Both the media and women's organizations were interested in it. Of course, Ryan's name was not mentioned, and Victoria did not want to turn everything into a banal pursuit of a criminal. Another thing was important to her: to warn others. Talk about how even a strong and independent woman can become a victim of violence and manipulation. That danger can lurk where you don't expect it, even from close friends. That the immunodeficiency virus is not a death sentence and anyone can face it, and how important it is to take responsibility for your health and each other. Victoria resigned from the leadership of her company, temporarily transferring affairs to deputies. She wasn't sure if she could return to the world of big business, at least that wasn't the main thing right now. In the eyes of many, she was still a model of strength. When a frank article on her behalf was published in a business magazine, she received hundreds of letters of support and hundreds of stories from women who also experienced violence or lived with HIV and were afraid to talk about it. The organizers of the Conference on Combating Stigma and Supporting Women Entrepreneurs themselves approached Victoria with an offer to give a closing speech. And now, in a minute, her name will be heard from the stage. She will share not so much the details, which were already enough in the press, but the conclusions she came to through pain. The coordinator looked behind the scenes and gestured that it was time. Victoria took a deep breath. 6 months ago, she could not even imagine that she would be able to talk publicly about this. But now the fear has dissolved. Yes, there was a long road ahead, both treatment and loneliness without a loved one. But she was no longer hiding. There was applause as the audience welcomed her exit. Victoria confidently climbed onto the stage and approached the pulpit. The hum died down. Hundreds of glances turned to her. "Good afternoon," she began, tilting her head slightly towards the microphone. "My name is Victoria Hayes. 3 months ago, I thought my life was over, but I'm standing in front of you, alive. And I want to tell you what helped me survive and find myself again." Her voice sounded firm and carried freely under the arches of the hall. And in these words, there was no longer a drop of shame, only the strength and dignity of a woman who had gone through hell and emerged stronger than before. "I once thought that it was impossible to break me," Victoria continued into the microphone. "I ran a company, made bold decisions, made deals worth millions. I was proud of what I achieved. But one day circumstances brought me to my knees. I was deceived, my gullibility and vulnerability were exploited. With those whom I trusted, who were called my friends," her voice trembled, but she continued firmly, "these people destroyed my familiar world. Overnight, I lost my job, my family, and my health. Yes, it happens. You can do everything right, try to be a good person, but one day you will become a victim of someone's anger or malicious intent. This can happen to anyone." She looked around the hall with a serious look. Some spectators sat with bated breath. In the first row, a woman covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes shining with tears. Victoria continued, "But today I'm here to say, even from the darkest abyss, there is a way out. Yes, it still hurts. Yes, I live with a serious diagnosis. My marriage fell apart. I lost my best friend. I had to step away from my beloved company, and yet I am not broken. Moreover, I feel more strength inside than before, because now I know something important about myself. I know how to acknowledge my vulnerability and draw strength from it." There was complete silence in the hall. Victoria took a breath and decided on the most personal thing. Unfortunately, often women who have achieved success are forced to wear a mask of indestructibility. We are taught that we have to be twice as strong to be taken seriously, and I wore this mask for many years. I felt like asking for help or showing weakness meant letting others and myself down. But I was wrong. When the accident happened, I blamed only myself for a long time. I thought, I'm strong, how could I let this happen? And then I realized that admitting that you are also a person who can be offended is not a weakness. On the contrary, this is the first step to pick up the pieces and become even stronger. I survived sexual violence and betrayal of a loved one, Victoria said clearly and directly. I live with HIV, and I'm no longer afraid to talk about it. But at first, it seemed to me that I had a cross, that society would never accept me, that colleagues and friends would whisper behind my back. But I was wrong. There were so many people ready to support me. A virus is not a stigma if we are not afraid to talk about it. When I decided to share my story, hundreds of people appeared around me, ready to support me. And I myself was able to support others who went through similar trials. Now I know for sure, none of us have to cope alone. Victoria saw several women's hands raised in the far rows. They quietly applauded her, agreeing. She felt a surge of inspiration and concluded her speech. Every person can stumble or become a victim, even the strongest and most successful. It is important to remember, our dignity is determined not by whether trouble happens to us, but by how we deal with it. I chose to cope openly, to seek help, to restore justice through the courts, to tell the truth, no matter how bitter it may be. And I want to encourage everyone here, don't be afraid of the truth. Don't be afraid to appear vulnerable. We are only as strong as we are honest with ourselves and others. Thank you. A pause hung in the hall, and then stormy, prolonged applause broke out. Victoria exhaled with relief and took a step back from the pulpit. She was overcome with a feeling of liberation. She said everything she had to. These words no longer burned in her chest, they flew out and took on a life of their own. Leaning forward, people in the front rows reached out to shake her hand. She smiled through the tears that welled up. This time, tears of pride and relief. Backstage, Victoria was met by a small crowd, organizers, journalists with microphones, and several female listeners. She patiently answered questions from the press, repeating the main thing. Every victim has the right to justice and support. Suddenly, a timid voice attracted her attention. Miss Hayes, can I talk to you? A thin girl of about 20 stood near the wall, holding a notepad in her hands. Victoria apologized to the reporters and approached her. The girl smiled timidly. I just wanted to say thank you. Your words are very important for people like me. 2 years ago, my boss, he also committed violence against me. I didn't tell anyone then. I was afraid, ashamed. But listening to you today, I realized that I want to fight. Thank you very much. She didn't finish speaking, she burst into tears, hiding her face in her hands. Victoria impulsively hugged her. Don't thank me, she whispered. Just know, you are not alone. We're all in this together. We can handle it. The girl nodded, sobbing. Victoria patted her on the back and looked around. Not far away, she noticed the familiar silhouette of a tall man in a baseball cap, standing apart. Her heart trembled. He looked too much like Ethan. She blinked, but the figure had already disappeared into the crowd. Victoria sighed. Maybe her imagination was playing a trick. Or maybe. But even if Ethan came to listen to her, he was not yet ready to return to her life. Perhaps someday, after everything. But not now. The conference organizer caught up with her at the exit and handed her a small envelope. Victoria, here, they gave you a note, he said mysteriously. She took the envelope in surprise. There was no addressee or signature on it. Victoria tore the edge and pulled out the card. There are just a few lines in a sweeping handwriting. I'm proud of you. I will forgive, but I will not forget. Take care of yourself, and... She clutched the card to her chest, feeling tears welling up in her eyes again. These words could only come from one person. Ethan couldn't approach her in person right now, but he heard her, and maybe someday he'll be able to forgive her completely. Victoria closed her eyes and mentally thanked fate for this sign. An invisible weight lifted from her heart. Victoria released the girl and assured her that she would help her contact the organization to protect her rights. After saying goodbye, she left the building and went outside. The sun was already setting, painting the city's skyscrapers in a golden light. This city has seen its ups and downs. Today I began to see her new ascent. Victoria took a deep breath of the evening air. She was sad and happy at the same time. It's sad because the past cannot be returned. Joyfully because she again felt the taste of life and freedom. There was an uncertain path ahead, but she was not afraid. She walked forward down the street, disappearing into the flow of townspeople, ready to face her future with her head held high. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.